Beware, citizen, you are now departing from the world of allowable opinion. The Tom Woods Show.
Welcome, everybody. It is Tuesday, January 14th, 2014. Tom Woods here, broadcasting as always, Monday through Friday at noon Eastern at TomWoodsRadio.com, and after that on iTunes as a podcast or wherever you like to get your podcasts. And today I am telling you, you are going to enjoy this program. You've got to listen to this program. If you're one of my subscribers and you're going through your iPod, you're looking at this episode, and you're saying, well, I don't really know if I'm going to. You got to listen to this episode. Your life is going to be improved because of the suggestions you got on this episode here. Now, look, I don't ask a whole lot of you guys. I give you a free show every day. You can enjoy it. Doesn't cost you a cent. This is one thing I'm asking you. Listen to this episode. We're going to have some fun here because we're talking progressive rock today. And you're saying, hey, Woods, I'm not interested in that. Yes, you are. You just don't know it yet. Give yourself a chance. Give us a chance to persuade you. Because we're joined today by Brad Birzer. Remember Brad Birzer? We had him on some time ago. We talked about Russell Kirk, and it was the best conversation in the history of mankind. Well, Brad is back. He's a professor of history at Hillsdale College. He's the author of several books, including a book on J.R.R. Tolkien. But today we're going to talk not about the website Brad helped found, theimaginative-conservative.com, but the website he helped found, ProgArchy.com. ProgArchy.com is a site dedicated to progressive rock. Brad Birzer, thanks so much for being here. I consider this to be like the most fun episode of all, but maybe you and I be the only ones who think that way.
Thanks, Tom. It's great to be here as always. I always love talking to you. And this is a topic that's near and dear to my heart and has been most of my life. So. Well,
listen, I know that some listeners might be inclined not to listen to this episode, but I told them in the intro, you gotta listen. Like, this is gonna be, although maybe this is a bad analogy, I was gonna say this is gonna be like the Beatles TV movie Magical Mystery Tour, where McCartney didn't plan it out, they just rode around England and saw what would happen, and it turned out nothing happened, so I don't know. I hope this doesn't turn out that way.
Oh, That's right.
All right, look.
Well, I'll follow your lead, Tom.
Well, first of all, I told everybody about ProgArchy, which I'm sorry to say, I mean, what an ignoramus. I didn't even know about it. I mean, this would be like a politics junkie not knowing about the Drudge Report. I'm sorry about that, but now I do. My ignorance no longer exists in this area. But first of all, let's just start off. You're the guy at ProgArchy. You're one of those people there, so you tell us what makes music progressive rather than not progressive. I mean, and let me say at the outset that somebody like Billy Joel, I respect him for what he does. Like, when it comes to what he does, he's great at it. He comes up with great melodies, good 3-4 minute songs that you can tap your foot to, and some of them are melancholy and interesting for other reasons. But I would feel sad if somebody went through his whole life thinking that music is Billy Joel. You know, like, I would feel like you missed out on something that is so life-enhancing, right? So what is it about progressive rock that makes it progressive in the non-Rachel Maddow sense of the word?
The non-Rachel Maddow, I like that. Well, first of all, Tom, the ProgArchy, our website's only been around for about a year and a half, so there's no reason you would know about it. And of course, I know you're a progger, and so that would give you some incentive to look at it, but it's still a pretty niche form of music, I think. Progressive music, of course, that the term progressive rock didn't really come about until the late 1960s, and it was used as an derogatory term at the time, but the people who were involved in it were really thinking more along the lines of jazz from the 20s and 30s. That is, they were trying to kind of break out of just typical 4/4 time refrains and so forth. And in some ways, your Billy Joel example is really interesting because you can have something like The Piano Man, which is incredibly complex in terms of song structure, but then you have something like Uptown Girl, which is not really complex at all. And I think a lot of what progressive rock has tried to do over 40 years is to really consider rock as an art form rather than as just an emotional outlet. So it would be probably Sgt. Pepper's versus Hard Day's Night. And that, right. Or maybe we might say it could be something like the Moody Blues rather than the Rolling Stones. And not that there's anything wrong with the Rolling Stones, but the Moody Blues were doing much more complicated things, and of course bringing in string instruments, orchestras, and so forth, and really trying to create long, involved songs. Sometimes, as my friend Winston Elliott says, anytime I recommend a song to him, he says to me, well, now, if I started him, I'm going to miss dinner.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
and that's a great. That was one of my favorite comebacks ever.
Well, you know, I think another feature of it is that you're much, much less likely to get tired of it. Now, it's going to take you longer to get to appreciate it. If you first hear it, you think there's nothing here, or I just can't get into this. You have to make some effort.
Right.
You have to sit there and listen. But once you've done that,
right. It's not wallpaper music. It's not backgrounds at all.
No.
It definitely takes involvement on the listener's part. I think both lyrically as well as in terms of whatever story is being told just through the music itself. So, yeah, I agree, Tom. I mean, you think about something like Thick as a Brick from Jethro Tull, and obviously that's not something you just put on for 5 minutes and walk away from.
Right.
It demands some attention.
Yeah, it draws you in. Now, I don't want my listeners thinking, well, I don't have time for this music then. You will. I'm telling you, you will. I mean, I mean, I would be sad if somebody went through life and had never listened to the following things. All right, I'm gonna give you a list of things that, and I didn't plan this ahead of time. This is like Magical Mystery Tour. We have no idea what's going to happen here. But I'm telling you, these are the things I would be sad if people hadn't listened to. And if you haven't listened to them, then this is a homework assignment for you too, Brad Birzer.
I'm listening, Tom.
They would be. Now, of course, people think Aqualung with Jethro Tull, and that's great, and I have no problem with that. But I think their best work ever was A Passion Play, and Ian hates it. And that time that I got to meet him after the show, I thought, well, if there's one thing he takes away from our conversation, it's that the fans love A Passion Play. And he still just disparages it and says, it's too much going on, and he just didn't really care for it. But they are remastering it.
Right.
I don't even know. It may be a remix. Right? I don't even know. But
I think it is a remix.
And
yeah.
it's Steven Wilson, so I'm sure he'll do. And Steven Wilson likes Passion Play. And Ian was actually saying to him, let's see if we can get rid of those terrible saxophones that I was playing. And Wilson is saying, what are you talking about? The saxophones are the whole thing. So he's he's keeping the faith on that. So I would say that. And again, you listen to that the first time, you say, what on earth just happened? But you listen to that and listen to it, and then you say, wow, that's a great piece. The second thing I would say that you absolutely have got to listen to, and listen to it until you see it, right? Listen to it until you see what's there, is the Yes album, Going for the One. Now, you don't have to like every song, but you have to like, I insist that you like, 2 songs on there. Turn of the Century, which is one of the most beautiful songs ever, and Awaken. They will just blow your mind.
Still, Tom.
All right, okay, what did you say?
I'm still with you completely.
Oh, good. So you know these pieces.
Yes, I do know. Yes.
All right. I mean, this music improves the world. Like, it stunningly improves the world. Now, maybe it's not for everybody, but I just find that hard to believe. I refuse to believe that. So just off the top of my head, those are 2, but that's the kind of style that I have in mind. And then when it comes to Pink Floyd, well, I like Shine On You Crazy Diamond. I like the long sorts of things. Although Rick Wright is not really a keyboard hero in the progressive tradition, really, and he would be the first to admit it. I can't play very fast.
No, I think that's absolutely right.
But he's very good at it and all that. But the other piece, though, that I think gets lost in Pink Floyd is the final cut. And then I'll let you talk in a minute. This is more of a conversation than an interview. I'll let you talk in a minute. But 1983, a lot of people don't like that album because it really is. It's very introspective by Roger Waters. It's a reflection, really, in part, about his own father's death in World War II, and a reflection on war in general. And I remember this album, David Gilmour, the guitarist, didn't like it at all. I was given a copy of it. I listened, and I just couldn't get into it. I finally said, look, I know there's something here. And I was probably, 15. And I got in bed one night with my headphones, and I said, I'm going to listen to this thing straight through. And I listened to it straight through, and it blew me away so much that I got right out of bed, and I started over, and I played it all over again straight through. So I would say those 3. All right, so now tell me if you had to pick 3, and I'm not saying those are the 3 best ever. Those are the 3 that recommend themselves to me right this second from the 70s and 80s. What are yours?
Oh, well, those are great, Tom, and I agree completely on the Pink Floyd. I agree with all of them, actually, but on the Pink Floyd especially, so many people go to the Wall or the Dark Side of the Moon, and those are fine albums. Depressing,
right?
Depressing, but wonderful. But for me, it's Animals and the Final Cut.
There you go.
I got the Final Cut when it came out, and it is so personal and intense. But it's not. It never bogs down to just pure navel gazing,
right?
Because it always has application to so much beyond. Roger Waters is a great critic. He's a great cultural critic, I think, in all kinds of ways. Which is one of the great things about even what you just picked here with Passion Play, Going for the One, and the Final Cut. Every one of these, in some way, either offers a brilliant criticism of the world, or like Going for the One looks at the beauty of the world, and that is fantastic.
Wait, before I let you go on any further, though, I do want to point out one thing that is so brilliant about just one of the many brilliant things about the Final Cut. In The Gunner's Dream, there's that part where he screams out and hold on to the dream, and his voice gets drowned out to the point where it becomes the saxophone line.
Yes.
And you can't tell when it goes from being his voice to being the saxophone. I mean, that's just killer, man. All right, so go ahead. All right, I'll shut up. You go ahead.
No, that's great. Okay, so I obviously did not plan this. These are just the things that popped to my head right away. I was born in 1967, and my first memories of listening to prog rock would be about 1972, because I had two older brothers, and in Kansas, as you probably know, hard rock and progressive rock was everywhere. So I was introduced to it very young, and I was very taken with it very young. So when I look back, for me, it would be, yes, Close to the Edge. That I think is just a stunning album in all kinds of ways.
Yeah.
Everything. Instruments, lyrics, which are a little psychedelic at times, and I think a little obscure, still great. Yeah. I would also, for me, Peter Gabriel Genesis era would be Selling England by the Pound.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Those to me are the absolute classic prog albums of that era.
All right, so let's make sure everybody hears this so they can take notes. So Close to the Edge by Yes. And
yes, that's right.
And Genesis, Selling England by the Pound, which grabs you from the first. That album absolutely grabs you. And by the way, Close to the Edge, I think, is one of the rare albums that well, maybe not totally rare, but it's in the sense that all three of those songs, I think the live versions are much better than the studio versions. I'd much rather have people hear the live.
Yes songs?
But
absolutely.
Or on any, even into the 90s, they were blowing the roof off the place with those songs. But still, I don't care what version you have. And in fact, I gave a speech in Philadelphia once, and the guy who introduced me said, if you had your choice, like what song would you want to walk out to if you're being introduced? So I told him Siberian Katru, and darn it if he didn't dig that song out. All right, what else?
Oh, that's great. Well, those would be my two from the early 70s. In the 80s, I would say Talk Talk's either The Color of Spring or Spirit of Eden would be, for me, the definitive albums at that time. Also just brilliant in all kinds of ways. But then, Tom, here we are now. We've had this just incredible revival of prog over the last 20 years. So, and a lot of people are calling this the third wave, and that I think is probably true, but just incredible stuff as well. And I know you haven't kept up as much with some of the more recent things, but there's some really good stuff coming out. Things, especially out of England and out of Sweden right now.
Yeah, well, let me jump in on that because I want to give you a sense of where I am so you can make recommendations for me. Because for a long time, I got all the Yes albums, got all the Jethro Tull albums, got all the Pink Floyd albums, got all the Genesis albums, all that. And then I kind of felt like, well, that's it, right? There isn't any more music that's going to appeal to me. And then one day I'm at a Yes concert with my wife. This was probably about 10 years ago. And the opener was a group with the bizarre name Porcupine Tree. And they were promoting their In Absentia album, which is extremely disturbing. And the images on the screen are disturbing. I mean, what a contrast, them and the elf-like John Anderson. Like everything's, we're all one. And then whereas this album is about serial killers, And I was just appalled. I thought, who are these jerks ruining my spiritual experience at the Yes concert? But darn it, I could not get these people out of my head. I went to iTunes, I got their album, I started listening, and I thought, wait a minute, there's somebody producing interesting music in this day and age. I refuse to believe it. And so since then, I sort of discovered Dream Theater, although I found the only album I've really been able to get into is Images and Words. But I want to know, if I am attracted to that kind of thing, tell me in 2014 what sort of awaits me. Because you guys over at ProgArchy just had a great review of all what you said is the wonderful music that came out in 2013. I don't know any of this stuff. I didn't buy anything in 2013.
One of the great things that's going on right now, Tom, is that you've got all these bands of guys who are in their 40s and 50s, and they grew up on the same things we did, and so they've got this incredible background. And as you know, one of the nice things about progressive rock is it always honors those who came before us. I think it's a really important part of it, that they can show a lineage. We come from here or there. We see these as influences. And so you've got these incredible musicians who are also very good lyricists, and I think that in some ways, and I realize this might anger some of the older listeners, and I've angered people who were big proggy people before with this, but I think in some ways, some of the things that are going on right now are better than anything that was done by Emerson, Lake and Palmer, or even Jethro Tull or Yes. And it's not because necessarily what they're doing is so original. It's more that they have that to build upon, and they're using that as a base. Here's our common language, and we're going to move forward from here. There are a couple of American bands that are very good. One in particular, out of Tennessee, Glass Hammer, is fantastic.
Wow. Okay.
More in the kind of ELP style, and the guy who runs it, Steve Babb, it's one of two actually who've run this. The band's been around for 20 years or longer. They would be directly in line with you and me, Tom, in terms of our worldview as well.
Oh, great!
You guys are. They're straight down the line.
Great.
Really, really solid guys in all kinds of ways. Big Tolkien fans, just great guys. And then in England right now, my favorite band, and I think these are just spectacular, is a group called Big Big Train. And they've also been around for about 20 years. Greg Spotten and Andy Poole are really the guys who have been doing this for, I think their first album came out in maybe 92 or 93. But what they do so beautifully is they really their music almost always deals with either late 19th century or early 20th century England. And a kind of real nobility about the entrepreneurial spirit, great look at sports, very interesting, but their characters, the people they sing about, are just so real. And just really stunning stuff. So I love what they're doing. And the other group that I think is really good, especially right now, is a group called The Tangent in England as well. The guy who runs that, Andy Tillison, is hilarious. I think he just turned 54, and he's an old lefty, and but his leftism is pretty wonderful in terms of its great cultural criticism, and it's hard to listen to him and not agree with what he's saying. He likes to call himself, he says his band is the evil twin of Big Big Train.
Oh, that's funny.
Big Big Train, these are the nice guys, and he's the kind of evil, elfish, spritish guy. But just incredible lyrics as well, and really, really good, interesting music. So those three bands, and there are a lot more, but those are the three I'd recommend right away, Tom.
All right, well, I'm going to check them out for sure. I'll tell you, I want to add something that I like about a group like Jethro Tull and also Porcupine Tree is that it's not like, once you have one AC/DC album, you pretty much have them all, right? I mean, you don't really feel compelled to acquire the entire catalog.
Right.
But with Jethro Tull, Aqualung sounds totally different from Stand Up, which sounds totally different from Passion Play, different from Minstrel in the Gallery, different from Songs in the Woods, Stormwatch, etc. They all sound complete. It's almost like a different band each time. And with Porcupine Tree, the Stupid Dream album sounds different from Signify. Now, lately, I think the last couple albums, I think they got into a bit of a rut, and it's a little bit predictable. I mean, The Incident left me a little cold. The concert was great. They were as tight as could be.
It was cold.
And I think Stephen Wilson.
I
think Stephen Wilson feels that way too, which is, I think, why he's not in such a rush to get back with Porcupine Tree. Now, I know you have your own views on Stephen Wilson. I think it would be too inside baseball to get into them here. I've considered actually inviting him on the program, but I don't know what I'd say to him, so maybe I better not do that till I think of it.
I think that'd be great.
No, it could be fun. The other guy I'm thinking of inviting on, though, is Steve Hogarth from Marillion. And now, the thing that I like about Marillion is, so Marillion's this group from the 80s on, and I know you know this, I don't mean to insult your intelligence, but for the first 4 albums, they had one guy as sort of the lead singer, lead guy, and then he left and they got Steve Hogarth. Well, so then the fans divide, it's not real Marillion if it's not the first guy, etc. Well, the thing about, I like the first albums, I sort of prefer the first guy, but the great thing about Hogarth is, there's one song that if you listen to the live performance of it, in fact, that's your homework assignment as listeners of this show is, after you've gone out and bought Going for the One by Yes, and don't put the first song on because you might not like it. Listen to the songs I told you about. But once you've done that, I want you to go to YouTube and listen to the live version of Marillion playing Neverland. Of all the songs, all the live performances, all the albums that I've heard in my life, I have never seen a song that just in live performance just blows me away more than that thing. And yet, anyway, the reason I think they'd be interesting to talk to is that they really exploited the internet early on when, they couldn't, for some reason, they have European fans, they didn't have enough American fans, they couldn't justify an American tour, they needed money just to get back in the studio and record an album, so they put out a note saying, hey fans, can you help spot us a little dough so we can record an album? And they raised a ton of money, and they went and did it, and Hogarth was blown away. He said, these people, then they raised money to help us come out there to the U.S., even though they knew they would then have to buy a ticket. On top of the donation, he said, we were all just blown away by this. That's a great story.
That is amazing. And Marbles, the album where Neverland first appears, I think is their best album. Just a stunning piece of work in all kinds of ways. Oh, that's great, Tom. Yeah, I think, I bet he would be very interested in coming on. And I think some of the guys I mentioned, too, Greg Spotten, Big Dick Train, or Andy Tillison of The Tangent, I think you guys would have a good conversation.
Yeah, I've got to spread them out, though. I can't tire the listeners.
Right.
But I'm not.
Woods show cannot become the ProgArchy.
That's right. But I'm not ruling this out because I do. Every week I can't talk about another town bought a bear cat for their police department. At some point you got to just live life and enjoy what's there. You can't let the SOBs get you down.
I tuned in for nullification, not tease out. Damn it.
But you know what's funny? You know what's funny? I was so surprised with it. Well, you know what? I better not say this. I'll just say that when I did talk to Ian Anderson, he very freely talked about a guitarist I like a lot. I didn't mention his name, and he said, there are some players who just play to show off, and that annoys me. They're not playing for the music. They're playing to show, hey, look how fast I am. Look at whatever. So off the air, I'll tell you who that was. But I was shocked to hear him say that. All right.
I believe it.
All right, so tell me, what should people do now? Let me start that over. You got this great website, ProgArchy. It's like a blog style thing. Well, who's blogging over there, and why should I care about these people's opinions?
Well, this is something we started about a year and a half ago, and Tom, I realize you were incredibly busy. Anytime you want to join in, you are more than welcome to. But this was founded by Carl Olson, who is
from Ignatius Press?
At Ignatius, and Chris Morrissey, who's a philosopher in Canada. He's up at British Columbia. And then a very good friend of mine, in fact, one of my college roommates, Jim, I don't know if you knew this, Tom, Jim Otteson was one of my college roommates, the Adam Smith scholar.
Oh, yeah,
and another one is Kevin McCormick, who's a professional classical guitarist, but also really loves progressive rock. So the four of us started this just a year and a half ago, and we kind of felt, when we first started it, we thought we're just going to focus on North American progressive acts, but we realized that there's actually, we were interested more than that, and I think the people who come and read us are as well. We're pretty divided. We've got almost half our readers are British, and the other half are either Canadian or from the United States, and then we get a smattering all over the world. But it's definitely, you can look and see on those the maps where people are coming from, that it's mostly from the UK and from the US. So, but anybody's welcome, and we follow a lot of, especially Scandinavian prog, with the Flower Kings and some other bands. We do a lot with them. So it's been a lot of fun. We do try and stay away, and of course, I write for other things like Catholic Vote, and you mentioned the conservative.
Right.
But we do try very hard to stay away from politics and religion, unless, of course,
it comes up
in the lyrics.
Right. Yeah.
You can't. So, but we try not to get into it. Now, we've got a number of people from Sweden and the UK who contribute, who are editors as well, and I've never even asked what their views are.
Yeah, I don't even want to know. Yeah, half the time I don't even want to know. Yeah. Let's just have some fun.
But no, it's not important.
Now, have you ever approached?
Sorry,
well, have you guys ever approached any of the acts that you follow and chronicle there, and asked for an interview for the site?
Oh yeah, this is one great thing about the prog movement as well. I think almost everyone, Steven Wilson's a very obvious exception to that, but almost everyone in the movement who's a musician, first of all, they're smart guys. You have very few people who listen to progressive rock are not going to be smart, and they're also intense guys. And it's not a field of music or not a style of music you'd get into unless you had fairly intense personality. So these guys are very interesting. They do all kinds of things outside of music, which they bring into the music as well, which makes them even more interesting. They're often very entrepreneurial, like Marillion, so they want to meet the people who are listening to their music, and it's great because I can write these famous people, and they write me right back. It's like, yeah, Brett, let's talk.
That's awesome.
It is really awesome. So that's a lot of fun. I mean, of course, a lot of these guys are guys I've grown up with, at least in my mind. They're always out there, so that's been pretty neat to have contact with a lot of these people. And some, John McLaughlin and some pretty famous jazz people too have gotten a hold of us. So it really does mean a lot.
Well, Ian Anderson and our little, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to hold this over your head that I met Ian Anderson and you didn't. I'm not trying to do that. But in our little chat, he mentioned that he has a new album coming out in 2014. He hopes around Easter time. So here he is in 2014. The staying power of these guys is unbelievable. Their first album came out in, I think, 1968. That is so fantastic. And his flute playing is better than ever, even though, unfortunately, his voice is shot.
Yeah, well, that's pretty understandable. Is it going to be a solo album? Or
it's a solo album. I mean, I don't really know what the state of things is between him and Martin Barr, who's really the only other member of the band who, at this point, would still be around and interested. And I think it may have been an unpleasant parting of the ways. And somebody actually on Twitter called me on this and said, hey, Woods, you turned into a blubbering fanboy when you talked to Ian Anderson. You didn't ask him the tough question, what did you do to Martin Barr? And I said, nobody's perfect. So,
no, that's right. There's certain things that are better not to bring
that's
up.
right. It's not, and you know what? It's really none of my business when it gets right down to it. It's really none of my business what his professional dealings are. Right.
Did you had him on the show?
I saw him in person because I got backstage passes because of a nice review I had given, and then I actually had him as I had a whole episode of the show with him as the guest. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I need to get that.
I put it on. I put it on YouTube, so you can the YouTube dispenses with my opening banter and everything. It goes right to me talking to Ian. And by the way, this is like the third show of the podcast. So
that's fantastic.
So the audio, the audio quality is still kind of low, and it sounds kind of like I'm speaking through a transistor radio, but that gives you some kind of the raw Tom Woods show experience.
That's great.
All right, listen, I'm going to let you get going because the thing is, this could just go on forever. And all I can say is, I sure hope you and I are going to be at a conference together sometime in the near future, so we can just get all this off our chest. All right,
we could whip our iPods out and show off.
Exactly. Well, listen, I want to encourage people to head over to, is it ProgArchy.com?
Yeah, just like Anarchy, but ProgArchy.
Exactly. All right, and check that out. All right, Brad Birzer, thanks so much for being here.
Tom.
Oh, the pleasure was mine.
It's a blast to talk to you.
Thank you. And that is the program for today, everybody. If you haven't checked out my new website, by the way, not the TomWoodsRadio.com site, but my personal site, TomWoods.com, I had it redesigned some time ago, and go check that out. I mean, maybe you might like it. It looks pretty nice, I think. So check that out. Also, don't forget, help us keep the lights on and pay our bills in our little Tom Woods Show office at no cost to yourself by entering Amazon when you're about to make a purchase at our Amazon widget at TomWoodsRadio.com. Lots more great programming coming up later this week. Ben Swan and others will join us. See you then.
The Tom Woods Show.